It's the Friday night party that you didn't know you needed until right now. Sports talk with two eligible bachelors and the one happily married host. That would be me, Stephen Rabinowitz. Introduce yourself, bachelors.
Hi, I'm Jay Kaplan.
Hi, I'm Anthony Strait, and I do acknowledge Roman Reigns as the head of the table and our resident tribal chief on the sports lines.
Welcome to On the Sports Lines, our MLB midseason report. Love it when we can get some WWE references in this show. In an effort to, let's talk. Tonight, we're going to talk about a lot of baseball as we have the MidSummer Classic coming on Tuesday. And, oh yeah, there's NBA final stuff going on. We'll get to that too. We'll even talk about Tampa's stronghold on the sports world and their Stanley Cup Finals victory. But first, in an effort to mitigate some of the best pitching we've seen since the dead ball era, all way before our times, even Jay gets partial credit with that, this past June 21st, a rule was implemented to get rid of the spider tack, or as we uncultured people like to call it, sticky stuff used by pitchers allegedly to doctor a ball or two or three or 17. Umpires are instructed to conduct frequent inspections, whether it be at the most appropriate times or not, and they can do it anytime between innings. And it's usually embarrassingly in public and involves a few pitchers embarrassingly dropping their pants. Anyway, nothing bad could come out of that. Anthony, what's your take on the implementation of this rule and if this will have changed the game in 2021 and it hasn't changed the game in 2021?
Well, here's a day. Major League Baseball, whenever they're trying to police itself, just does a really poor job of doing so.
Yeah, no.
I was at Tyler McGill's first major league start last month against the Atlanta Braves, and how was it when your standing ovation, you're walking on the mound, is ruined by a cavity search in the middle of a ball game in the middle of the stadium? It is bizarre. I thought it was something that Major League Baseball probably could have implemented next season to kind of give pitchers a chance to kind of adjust to the rule and off season maybe. A mid-season rule change and doing things on the fly just always cause for chaos, but it has provided a good moment in Matt Sturgeon and Joe Girardi's gamesmanship a few weeks back in Philadelphia. We all saw how that turned out. But but it was funny because the spin rate since then across Major League Baseball, according to this article on the Washington Post, is actually down since the ban of the sticky stuff, which is kind of weird. By the way, before we continue, I don't have anything on my hands. There's nothing on my hair.
We checked you before the show. You're all good.
I want to see what's under the brim of that cap, mister. I want to see what's under the brim of that cap, mister.
Oh, yeah, there's nothing there. The Legend of Zelda, okay, right. I'm a throwback gamer. But yeah, across Major League Baseball, that's the day before the ban. Batting averages was just under around 240. I don't know if this has much to do with pitchers as much as how hitters approach every at bat these days. It's normally more, you see it across baseball, it's either a home run or strikeout. I mean, it's so rare to see hitters even hitting for contact and hitting for average anymore. And that's been a downward trend for like the last several years. I don't have the exact number, but if you watch the naked eye, you kind of see like it's either a strikeout or a hit. I mean, look at the Mets right now, who we're going to talk about later on. Pete Alonso,
we are in an era, Anthony, where there are more strikeouts in a given season than singles.
Yeah, and you know what? It's the old saying that you stay the long ball, and we see that it's either home run or a strikeout. That's kind of been what it is. But I felt like Major League Baseball probably could have worked with the pitchers, maybe come with a compromise, maybe a league approved sticky spray or something that the pitchers can use, maybe once or twice a game for some grit. You know, kind of like everybody just kind of comes to some kind of compromise. Maybe you see the batters be able to use pine tar, but to a certain extent on the bats. The rosin bag, I mean, it's really it's way to kind of take away the moisture from your hands. It doesn't actually help with your grip whatsoever. I think, like I said, it's something that Major League Baseball completely screwed up as far as implementing. It's something that they probably could have gradually eased in Or at the very least, like maybe come up with something. You see with basketball and in the NBA, they have a sticky roll on it. They put on their sneakers to keep them slipping around so much. That's at the score tape. That's at the score tapes at every game. So I just feel like something, maybe like baseball, watching Bob Manfred probably should have consulted with the Player Association, maybe come up with something like, and I think that's what's been a knock on Bob Manfred is his unwillingness to compromise and in situations where maybe a compromise would have been the best for both parties. I think in this case, it wouldn't allow Major League Baseball to look so comical and implement this. And we're going to have full carry socials at some point during the season between innings, and that's going to be a little awkward for the pitcher and the 20,000 on hand for a ball game.
All right, get ready for the rant. Here it comes. Is there anything that Major League Baseball has not handled badly recently? This whole thing with the crackdown on sticky, tacky substances 2 months into the season and the stop and frisk mandate to umpires since that mid-June memo has increased the Charlie Foxtrot level of a situation that was already an embarrassing mess. Let me be clear where I stand on using foreign substances on the baseball by pitchers. It is against the rules. The fact that pitchers throughout baseball history have violated that rule to varying degrees, from the simple mixing of sunscreen with rosin to the spitballs of the early 20th century and the myriad ways that Hall of Famer Gaylord Perry messed with the baseball en route to winning 300 plus games, to Garrett Cole saying much of this was handed down from previous generations of pitchers to this generation, does not make it right. The fact that MLB has ignored or paid mere lip service to this doesn't make it right. This is not one of those unwritten rules of baseball that have been part of the culture since 1900. This is a clearly spelled out rule because MLB has turned a blind eye to it for pretty much a century. It's gotten to the point where things like spider tack have become prominent and commonplace, allowing pitchers to get the type of grip on the baseball that has spin rates dominating the conversation as the same level as exit velocity, and has us comparing the ridiculous pitching numbers of this decade to the year of the pitcher in 1968. Baseball only cares about pitchers breaking the rules to get an advantage over hitters when it gets to the point that offense craters like it did at the start of this season. The fact that MLB basically shoved this hard line down the Players Association throat makes for bad optics, even if they could, because they can couch it as enforcement of an existing rule. The fact that the Players Association appeared to offer very little in the way of input on this also makes for bad optics, because it makes it look like they care more about the hitters than the pitchers, at least to some. Especially some players see this as a quick in-season decision by MLB that should have taken more time and more conversation before being implemented. But all that aside, the reason this is a continuing issue is because MLB can't seem to get a version of the baseball that everyone can agree on. And the fact that they are a part owner of Rawlings, who makes the baseball, has a lot of people questioning transparency in there. MLB Players Association Director Tony Clark said it best. Here's the quote. "Everyone agrees grip is important. That's why rosin is legal. The question becomes whether rosin is sufficient or we should consider approved alternatives," something Anthony mentioned. "This question has become more important given the changes and lack of consistency in the baseball in recent years." Look, baseball has always gone back and forth, trying to find the balance between hitters and pitchers dominating the game. With the people running the game coming out with new rules and new strategies and new baseballs whenever the balance was out of whack. Pitchers became too dominant, so baseball lowered the mound and added the DH in the American League. Hitters got too dominant, so baseball cracked down on PEDs, and teams turned to more hard-throwing relief pitchers. Then the game became way too outcome-centric, with pitchers striking out everybody and hitters jacking balls out of the ballpark like they had warp drives. Then MLB decided hitters were hitting too many home runs, and all of a sudden the ball stopped traveling, and last year's homers are dying on this year's warning tracks. But that led to the ridiculous spin rates and the aforementioned 1968 level dominance by pitchers, and that caused MLB to panic again, and that's why we are where we are. Joe Posnanski, who's a senior writer for The Athletic and one of the best baseball writers of his generation, probably put it best. Here's the quote. At some point, it became clear that putting stuff on the ball wasn't just lowercase cheating, the sort of gamesmanship cheating that many people have a tolerance for, but all caps cheating, the kind that for many ruins the game. So I understand and I agree with MLB for trying to level the playing field here and cracking down on what's become all caps cheating. But look, no solution that they rolled out was going to be perfect. But as usual, they went to the opposite extreme to try and enforce this existing rule that they previously paid lip service to, and it alienated a huge portion of the players, which is unfortunately why we are where we are with this situation. A Charlie Foxtrot of ridiculous proportions. Here
you have to, if you end a rant, obviously you have to end it with end rant. All I have to say is this. I think Rob Manfred is always thinking, oh my God, I need more offense in the game. And this is the only thing he's thinking. I think he's always thinking about ratings because instead of actually finding constructive ways
Outlaw
to fix the game. Yeah, well, why do we do this? That's the second time in a row we could be talking about this. Let's drop that for another show. But I think there is a lot of things that need to be done in the game. This is one of them, but guess what? It's not as big of a deal as you possibly think. I think we'll talk about this with the Aroldis Chapman and Garrett Cole a little bit later, but we still are seeing some dominant years from pitchers. ERAs are under 2 across the board. Look at Jacob deGrom. He's having one of the best seasons in natural history. I'm not saying it's anything aided with anything, but it's one of the best seasons in natural history. The pitchers have worked the hitters' problems at the plate, their discipline at the plate, and guess what? Chicks dig the long ball, and I think that's even now more than ever than from what we actually saw in the 90s, except there's no real fundamental teaching of baseball anymore. No. There's a teaching of how to do the showboating things in baseball, and there's a teaching on how to be a 5-tool player not on the base paths, but actually in the box in baseball. And that's one of the reasons we're seeing all the numbers across the board down this year. But I don't know what to expect with this crackdown. Again, it's just the way it's happening. You don't need to see a Max Scherzer versus Joe Girardi chess match for 6 innings. I'm not going to the ballpark and seeing that in June. I'm not going to the ballpark to seeing somebody just throw a rant at an umpire every now and then. Anthony saw a pitcher go into his first game, getting a standing ovation on the mound, and then immediately turning to boos when an umpire goes and checks him on the way to the dugout. Yep. It's ridiculous. Baseball needs to, again, realize that not everything needs to be reactionary. We weren't, oh my God, freaking out about spider tack to the point of this. I just think if you even look this week with the All-Star game being in Coors Field, they are going to not put the balls in a humidor. They are going to let the offense fly. They want offense. They don't think pitching sells. And guess what? We've had 9 no-hitters this year in Major League Baseball. 7 and 9 innings, 2 and 7 innings. Yeah, I said it. It's a no-hitter. If you change the amount of innings in baseball and you pitch no-hits, it's a no-hitter. Pitching rules in this game right now, and this rule isn't going to change that. It's just going to embarrass.
Yeah, you know what it is? It also, if you wanted to say that the pitching is dominant, they got the ERA of the American League pitching staff and the National League pitching staff going into the All-Star game. It is literally night and day. Like the National League is like almost pitching no hitters. If you combine, look at the ERA, it's literally just above 2. Like I saw the stat like on Baseball Tonight a few days ago prior to the Mets Yankee game. And I'm just like, it is unbelievable. But then you look at the approaches to hitting these days, and it's like, well, I mean, you can't hit against a shift. You don't know how to hit to the opposite field. Yeah, I don't know what. I mean, you blame it. I mean, you can't really put so much on pitching getting an advantage when the hitters aren't making adjustments.
Okay, let's move on. Although you mentioned shift again, and that makes me want to get away from baseball immediately and go on to the 2021 NBA Finals. Before we get to the boys of summer, let's talk about the 21 NBA Finals. The Finals, not including MJ, Kobe, LeBron, Duncan, or Steph. That's 5 players and 5 players only for the first time in over a quarter of a century. The last time it was that way was 1996.
Wow.
So let's start with the Suns, who going into the NBA Finals were 20-4. in the 2020 bubble and 2021 playoffs combined. Now it's 22-4 as they're up 2-0 in this best of 7 series after a pair of close double-digit wins in Game 1 and Game 2. They are looking for their first NBA title of all time. They haven't been to the finals since the Barkley era of 1993. We're going to look at our watch. No need to tell time. It's Star, Stat, and X Factor watch. Anthony, let's talk about Devin Booker.
You know what? First off, it's great to see fans back in the state in the arenas. That's number one. And 2 really passionate fan bases at that. But you know what? Devin Booker, he's 2 games away from capping off a legendary postseason after Kobe Bryant basically told him to be legendary. I mean, you look at this, and maybe we should have saw this coming in the bubble last year when the Suns went 8-0 and missed the playoffs. Really not by much. But Devin Booker, he averaged 25 in the regular season. Think about his penchant for big game moments. And the closeout game against the Lakers, 47 in that game. And against the Clippers around in the conference finals, he goes for 40. He career high 13 rebounds, 11 assists. Game 2, he set the screen that freed up DeAndre Ayton for that tip-in to win the game. But you look at it like this too, and games. Remember, he actually played with a broken nose for much of that conference finals series and struggled. You know, in the middle games of that series, he was combined 32 of 91 shooting, but was able to step it up. He's combined in the closeout games against the Lakers and against the Clippers, 112 points, which is the 6th highest total behind Michael Jordan, Will Chamberlain, and Elgin Baylor. So for a postseason run, he definitely has stepped up. In Game 1, he had 27 points, but a quiet 27 points when you realize how dominant Chris Paul was in that game, and the Suns pretty much doing whatever they wanted on offense. Game 2 with Drew Holiday, who I'll talk about in our next segment, being more focused on Chris Paul. Devin Booker stepped up big time. 31 points, but 7 of 12 from 3-pointers. I tell you what, when he gets either PJ Tucker or Covington on a switch, it is like Christmas come early for Devin Booker. Look, at this rate, he has just been phenomenal. Playing alongside a floor general and leader like Chris Paul has probably been the best thing that has happened to his career. And Rabbi mentioned this earlier this week. Draymond Green said that Devin Booker would never win in Phoenix. Well, how about this? Draymond's watching the finals with the rest of us, and he's watching Devin Booker halfway close to an NBA title. So, fun times ahead, huh, Draymond?
Got fined $50,000, by the way, for that comment that he said last year on Inside the NBA on TNT. Whoops. Also proving, by the way, that the Kardashian curse, as the Kardashians said on their final ever episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, is more on the player than it is.
He's dating a Jenner.
Yes, he's dating somebody in the family.
Same
part
tree.
Of the curse.
Different
same
plan.
tree, same curse.
You know what? That didn't work out for Ben. You know what? That didn't work out for Ben Simmons either, but that's another story.
Don't mention Ben Simmons. It's like the shift. Don't do it. Don't you do it. Jay, let's talk about one of the most surprising players of this postseason, DeAndre Ayton in our South.
Yeah. When we had our production meeting for the show this week, it was before the NBA Finals started. So I kind of based my stat watch on something I saw previously in the playoffs and was curious to see if it would carry over in some way to the NBA Finals. And that, for the Suns, that was DeAndre Ayton's control of the glass. During the regular seasons, Phoenix was 12-2 in games where Ayton had 14 or more rebounds, 3-0 in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. So I saw this as a potential trend to watch. Then Ayton averaged 13.7 boards against the Clippers in the conference finals with 3 games of 14 or more rebounds, all of which the Suns won, including 22 with 9 offensive rebounds in the Game 4 win that put Phoenix up 3-1. And then 17 rebounds with 5 on the offensive end in the Game 6 clincher. Those are some Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain type rebound games. He's had 7 games of 14 or more rebounds in the playoffs. The Suns have won all 7. The trend has that trend has carried over to the NBA Finals through the first 2 games. Granted, it's a small sample size, but so far it's carried over. He had 19 rebounds in Game 1 and Phoenix won going away. The final score of 118-105 was not as close as even that would seem to be, as the Suns entered the fourth quarter up by 16. Now, while Ayton has improved significantly on the offensive end, he's averaging 16 points per game on almost 71% field goal shooting coming into the finals as part of – he's become a big part of the Suns' lethal pick-and-roll offense as both a screener and a rim runner. What I think it'll be his control of the boards that could very well determine if the Suns will be raising a banner in the rafters on opening night of next season.
Ayton in that first game had that 22-19. First player since Duncan to do it in an NBA Finals debut. Giannis also did it, by the way, but that kind of got lost under the table in that game one.
Yep.
And also 19 rebounds in that game, which is the most by a Suns player ever in an NBA Finals game, tied with Charles Barkley. Barkley needed to do it in overtime with 53 minutes. Ayton took 14 less. I think the one big thing about DeAndre Ayton this postseason, and we even saw it, I even mentioned it before the Lakers series in a negative connotation because, everything I touch turns to what. I have to say that he has been as good of a center as you can ask in these playoffs. He has been the most effective five. And we'll see how this goes. Last night, he kind of got dominated by Giannis a little bit, but he also never gets into foul trouble. That's a very important thing. He can play defense without fouling, and that's something I'm very impressed with DeAndre Ayton playing like a number one pick, which he is.
He's finally come into that.
X Factor. All right, there is so many people on this team that would qualify as an X Factor, but I have to think, first of all, shout out to someone who I really probably should have included, and that's Mikal Bridges for what he did last night, guarding Chris Middleton and going for 27 in a game, in a finals game, which, again, your players play better at home, but it's ridiculous how good he is. But Cam Payne, in the minutes that Chris Paul hasn't played in this postseason, has been a huge cog for this team. And, Paul is a free agent, so if they don't want to pay him 3 years, $90 million, that might be the way to go. He's been good this whole entire postseason. He had a 29-point game in game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. He was playing in China in the beginning of in 2019 and made his way to the bubble and played minimal minutes. But right now, and you saw him in this whole entire playoffs. When Paul got injured in that Lakers series, Cam Payne did an admirable job for him, helped them win game 1 and helped them keep afloat. This team is not a deep team, especially in the big man category overall, but you have depth in that point guard position. And that's going to be huge coming down the stretch because Chris Paul is 36 years old. 36 years old is not something that is ideal for a long NBA Finals or playoffs run. Luckily, there's a little bit of space in this postseason series, so Paul might be able to do the job. He might be a freaking machine at this point because it seems like every game he plays, he gets better. But to have Payne supplement his minutes and play at a position where he can make moves, he can score, and he can get his assists, that's going to be huge in this series, especially going forward. If they can win one out of these next 2 games in Milwaukee, probably a wrap for the Phoenix Suns to win their first title. All right, we move on to the Bucks. They actually have a title to speak of, albeit from 3 years after the dead ball era in 1971. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, now all of a sudden wearing Bucks paraphernalia on Twitter. And Oscar Robertson, but the fact that Lou Alcindor is kind of now back into Bucks colors, it's a weird 2021. So, as the Buckaroos go back to Milwaukee and their poor excuse for a Jurassic Park knockoff, the Deer District, shout out to the 6 in Toronto. See, it's 0-2. Let's see if the Bucks can come back. Same 3 watches, Anthony. Let's talk about the reasons why more kids are spelling Chris with a K. But are you talking about Holiday though? I think I screwed up my screwed up my little opening. So, but we also spelled J-Rue, J-R-U-E, so it does kind of work either way.
Well, yeah. I mean, and speaking of, I forgot to throw on my spelling bee, but we'll talk about that after the show, of course. But
we might have time to actually stretch before we have our guest on. So that actually might be something that we could do. Just start spelling for 10, 15 minutes.
Al Antetokounmpo. There you go. If you can do that, you win the spelling bee.
Yeah,
I have a
I'm
computer.
not
Give
gonna
me
get
a
on
minute
around
and I'll
with
get that up
one.
for
And
you.
no looking at your notes. You got to spell it blind.
Okay. No, well, Drew Holiday. The thing is, though, with Holiday, there are some nights he's been so up and down this postseason. Like he played phenomenal in the first round sweep against Miami, averaging close to 18 points a game along with 6 assists. In round 2, he did not shoot the ball well, but came up big against the Brooklyn Nets. Game 3, the game winner, that pretty much prevented Milwaukee from falling down 3-0 and probably losing that series. And came up very clutch in Game 7 on the road in Brooklyn. And in the conference finals, after Giannis went down, he stepped up just as big. And in the tail end of that series, he averaged 22 and 10 assists in the 2 games after Giannis got injured and had to miss games 5 and 6. But when you look at his responsibilities in the series, it's not just running the offense for the Milwaukee Bucks, it's also what he has to do defensively. Look, he's an all NBA defensive player. And in Game 1, he did a good job on Devin Booker. He held him a 1 of 6 shooter when he guarded him. The problem was on the offensive end, he shot 4 of 14 from the field. And in game 2, he shot 7 of 21 from the field. He's combined 11 of 35 in the first 2 games of the series. And obviously, when he's at his best offensively, is when he's being aggressive, when he's getting to the basket. He started out that way early on, attacking the basket, and we saw in Game 2, Milwaukee literally dominated the paint in the first half of that game. The problem is, on the other end as well, Mike Budenholzer took him off of Chris Paul, took him off of Devin Booker in Game 2 after he did a good job on that because Chris Paul had such a big Game 1. He puts him on Chris Paul. He slows down Chris Paul, but now Devin Booker goes off for a big game. So you have a situation where Drew Holiday is being asked to be a primary defender, but there's 2 guys that he has to really guard at this point because we've seen that when the Suns are able to get that switch off of anyone that Holiday is guarding, it leads to a favorable matchup that they're getting on the offensive side. But Drew Holiday offensively is what the problem is. I mean, defensively, he's been able to slow down the guys he's guarding. Offensively, they really need him because Giannis has been phenomenal. For a guy who a week ago we thought was going to be done for the season, the way he came down on that knee, he's been nothing short of spectacular. As you can hear the thunder in the background noise behind me.
In New York, what in the last 2 days? That doesn't happen.
Yeah, but Drew Holiday, he's got to pick his offensive game up. He's got to be aggressive. He's got to continue. He's got to attack the basket more consistently. Because right now you look at it like this, he's giving the Milwaukee Bucks Eric Bledsoe flashbacks, and that's not a good thing now. And for the amount that the Milwaukee Bucks gave up to bring him in, he's got to cash in big time.
Okay, I'm going to have to bring back up Ben Simmons, and I want to talk about this for a second. Defensive plays matter, but we've seen in this offseason, the one thing that Holiday did better in Game 2 is he got his shot off. I don't want to hear Eric Bledsoe because he was the worst thing that ever happened to the Bucks. He is almost a ball-dominant player, first and foremost, and he never met a shot on the court that he didn't like, no matter what the situation, no matter what the time is. But the good thing, at least for Holiday, is he shot the ball in Game 2. But unfortunately for the Bucks, Jrue Holiday cannot apparently make a shot from 6 feet. The shot chart had X's, kind of like it was a overmatched tic-tac-toe board when you're looking inside of the paint. Mm-hmm. And Holiday was not shy in Game 2, but Holiday works very well in a small ball offense. And we'll talk about that in a second, but let's get some stats, Jay, as we move on.
As with my stat watch for the Suns, when we had our production meeting at the beginning of the weekend, NBA Finals had not yet started. So once again, I based my stat watch on something I saw in the conference finals and was curious to see if it would carry over in some way to the NBA finals. Now, that's not to say I was going to specifically look to see if Chris Middleton would go off in any particular quarter against the Suns like he did against the Hawks, scoring 20 of his 38 in the fourth quarter of the Bucks Game 3 win, followed by 16 in a row and 23 overall of his game-high 32 in the Game 6 clincher. Wasn't about that so much. It was about whether he continued to do what the Bucks need him to do, and that is plain and simple, get buckets and plenty of them, which he is very capable of doing at all three levels in support of Giannis, who we know is going to put up his MVP level numbers. He's averaging 28.5, 12, 9, and 5-1 points, rebounds, and assists this postseason to give the Bucks their best chance of taking home the title. Now, so far through the first two games of the finals, he has not gotten those buckets, not consistently in the way that the Bucks need him to. Although he had a huge second half in game one, he's 17 of 42 from the floor overall. That's just 40.5%. And 6 of 18 from downtown. That's 33.3%. He has yet to get to the free throw line. He's averaging 20 points a game through the first two because he's averaging 21 field goal attempts per game in almost 43 minutes per game. Yes, he went for 29 in game one, but he needed 26 field goal attempts in 44 minutes to get those 29 points. And he was pretty much MIA in game two, 11 points on 5 of 16, including 1 of 6 from 3 over 41 minutes. That is not a recipe of success for the Bucks. In Milwaukee's 12 wins this postseason, Middleton is averaging 26 points per game, making 41.8% of his threes and 48% of his mid-range shots. In the Bucks 5 losses, he is averaging just 17.2 points per game while putting up these woefully bad shooting numbers. 15.4% from 3, 24% from mid-range. We all know which version of Chris Middleton needs to show up if the Bucks are going to take home the Larry O'Brien trophy. So far, we have not seen that version.
And given it was a JV squad for most of the Bucks Hawks game 5 and game 6, at least not from what you would actually see off of a Final Four NBA Finals game, Middleton can score and can be the most dominant player on the court in bunches. There was a talk during that series. It's like, is Middleton the star and Giannis the sidekick? And the answer is absolutely not. But I think Middleton and Holiday, who are both going to Japan, to Tokyo after this is done, they're tired. They can shoot, but I don't know if they know how to play correctly with Giannis in the postseason. I don't know if that is the case. I think they can make big buckets, but they cannot consistently be the first option. And from what you and Anthony have said, Jay, in these last few minutes, they need to get their act together because Giannis can't do this by himself. I don't think he expected to do this by himself, but last night he was doing every single thing that he possibly could in that game. So get your act together, Milwaukee.
Yeah, I mean, and Steve, that pretty much lays it down because Giannis has said on more than one occasion he has the utmost amount of trust in Chris Middleton. He knows full well what that guy's capable of. He says Chris can score on anybody, and when he's on his game, we always say get him the ball. But he hasn't been on his game, and if Giannis has to carry this team, we have seen in the past, it may work in the regular season in certain places. It's not going to work in the NBA Finals against this Phoenix Suns team.
Especially when you're trading 2s for 3s all the time. You can't do that in any NBA game.
Phoenix going 20 of 40 from beyond the arc in game 2. It's ridiculous. But that's the NBA we're in now.
That's essentially your maker. It's essentially why this is a make or miss league. And the Suns have been making at a lot more than they've been missing. Okay. That leads me to kind of what Brook Lopez has been doing in this postseason. I think he's a huge X factor, but he's played less than 30 minutes in games 1 and game 2. And specifically because defensively, he just doesn't match up well in this series, especially with Giannis back on the floor. They've been putting Lopez in so many switches, you might as well just put a light bulb in front and top of him, because that's the way that they've been attacking him. And it's been so effective that you can either draw help with him, You try to put a good mismatch on him. You need Bobby Portis on the court almost at all times to be a good guarder. But when that happens, you can't win with it. And the thing with Lopez is he represents a big lineup. If you watch games 5 and game 6 against Atlanta, and given not only is it a small sample size, it's without Giannis and against a pretty much not Trae Young team.
Yeah.
You saw Lopez's best in the paint, inside. He's not a three-point shooter. He should be taking as little threes as he possibly can. He may be the best net in the history of the NBA, but he surely is not the best three-point shooter in the history of the NBA. You need to work on his strengths, and a lot of teams cannot play big versus the Suns because of Ayton, but I think they have to play big against the Suns because you saw it last night in the first few minutes of the game. They did not take a three-point shot for about 8 minutes in that game, and they were leading pretty much wire to wire in the first quarter. I'm not saying it's effective because obviously they weren't also guarding the three on the other end. So again, as we've said, 3 is still more than 2. Simple Common Core math.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you need to do with Lopez is work him the best of your ability into the rotation because you can't sit him. You only really have 7 guys on the Bucks that could really be finals worthy. And you have to play to this team's strengths. And this team's strength is not beyond the 3-point arcing line. The 3-point line. I know in the regular season, this was the most efficient offense in the league, but you can't be an efficient offense in the postseason. You can't run it the same way. And I still don't really think Mike Budenholzer actually gets that through his thick skull as of yet. And all of the hair that is currently on his head that needs to seep in. He always looks like he's on vacation. After Wednesday night, he'd actually might be on vacation.
Well, I mean, yeah. Rabbi, to be fair, Budenholzer has tweaked his offensive scheme.
He has. He's done a lot in this series, I do have to admit.
He has. And the thing that, like, to me that annoys me is that when Giannis is on the floor with Lopez, they seem to do this. They don't seem to have the wherewithal to understand that Lopez should be in the post and Giannis should be in the dunker spot. Giannis needs to, if he's not operating facing up the basket and operating in an ISO situation, if you're in a half-court set, he needs to be in the dunker spot with Lopez operating out of the post because that's where both of those guys are most effective. And that allows the shooters to array around the two of them. You talk about Milwaukee's three-point shooting, and unfortunately, they are not loaded with guys with a depth of guys who can knock down the three. Bryn Forbes can get hot from beyond the arc, and he has on various occasions. But when he comes in, everybody knows what his role is, so defenses change to close him out. Same with Pat Connaughton.
Connaughton, yeah.
You know what he's going to bring, so you alter it to do that. And as good as Middleton and Holiday are and can go for points in bunches, they're more mid-range and get to the rim guys than they are three-point shooters. And you've seen that in the fact where they have both struggled from beyond the arc. And if you are not going to, be able to match 3 for 3 with Phoenix, then you have to do a better job in executing your offense, as well as do a better job of executing on defense to make sure you are closing out on shooters. And because I got to tell you, if you're Budenholzer, you want them to step inside that arc. Now, granted, both Booker and Paul are lethal from mid-range, and we know, I already told you what Ayton's doing from inside the paint. But if you get them inside of the arc and have them taking those shots, that at least puts you on equal footing and gives you a chance. They have not been able to do that consistently so far in this series, and that's why they're down 0-2.
You have to limit possessions. That's the most important part. If you don't limit your possessions, you're not going to win. You're not going to win against this team. And I think the Suns, I know the NBA playoffs have had so many injuries, but the Suns are the best of a very, very, very small patch. And they have definitely earned this 2-0 lead. They have taken a 2-0 lead in the last 3 series, and I don't see too much of that changing. We're going to talk MLB now. We're waiting for our guest, Greg Prince, to join us. We'll see that in just a second. What are your first thoughts of the MLB season? It's been a very interesting season, but I do think it's just so weird seeing us already at the halfway point with so much stuff still going on.
I mean, there has been so many things that have happened this season that, have never happened before. You talk about the ridiculous explosion of no-hitters. You talk about how do you classify what Madison Bumgarner did, no-hitting a team for 7 innings, and they're saying,
and also
not
what
a
Tampa Bay
game. So I'm
and
like,
what Tampa Bay just did, by the way, just a few days ago against Cleveland.
It's funny. I was reading Jason Stark's latest article that today, and he was talking about how many about this season, how no hitters have seemingly been a curse, where a team who has been who pulls where teams have gone on ridiculous winning streaks or losing streaks, after being no hit or whatever. I mean, think about what happened to the Diamondbacks after that Madison Bumgarner 7-inning, whatever you want to call it. They lost 24 in a row on the road after that. I'm like,
we'll talk about that very quickly in a moment. But speaking of, right on cue, we have Greg Prince, author of a very damn good blog out there, Faith and Fear in Flushing. We'll talk about the New York Mets, who can add an identifier to their title this year, first place. They have characteristics of a 500 team, yet they're about to be 8 games over that and leading the East by 4.5 games going into the weekend against what is a combo of the Braves, Phillies, and Nationals. So I'm just going to call them the Brillinals, because every single day the team in second always changes. Greg Prince, the Mets like the back of your hand. Welcome. Good evening, sir.
Good to be here, everybody.
Glad to have you back on the show, my friend.
We're going to talk some good, bad, and ugly. So we always like to start with the positive. What is the good that you've seen of the New York Mets in 2021?
That's my question.
Well, I'm going to ask it. You can ask something else. I'm sorry. I moved it on real quick.
I'm always happy to talk good. You can have all the good you want. Well, let's, veer slightly off the beaten path of Jacob deGrom and say one of the things I've really come to enjoy very recently is the fact that this team has depth. On a position player basis, we saw them kind of scratch and claw for 8 players to play 8 positions for a while when almost everybody was injured. And now that almost everybody is back, you have a very professional bench behind you. And you kind of got a hint of that earlier this week. You saw Jose Peraza, who may not be the answer at second base on a daily basis, come off the bench and hit a home run as a pinch hitter off Josh Hader, ties a game, sets up an eventual win. And I think we're seeing evidence of having Peraza, Pilar, VR, who has made himself very valuable in the starting lineup from time to time, but may have to take a backseat to JD Davis. You've got Tomas Nido, who is for a while there was catcher 1B. So you put all of these guys together, and a couple other names I'm not even throwing out there. And it's a full team. Billy McKinney, we didn't know who he was a couple of months ago, but now it's like, hey, we've got one guy after another. We say he could be starting for us, and that's a good feeling because we've already seen that players are not indestructible. So it's nice to know you're going to the second half.
The funny thing is, Greg, you alluded to deGrom, and I talked about him when we did this segment at the 1/3 mark. The historic type of season that he's putting up. Everybody's talking about, the comparison to Bob Gibson in 1968. And I'm just curious about your take on that historical comparison between what he's doing now and what Gibson did in the year of the pitcher.
Well, there's got to be at least, Gibson probably made about 3 dozen starts. There's probably 3 dozen points of difference between 1968 and 2021 and how the game is played and what's expected of pitchers. But the fact that all of us have gone through our lives as baseball fans with 1.12 as the holy grail.
Yeah.
And to see somebody challenging it is breathtaking. It's mind-boggling. It's life-affirming if you're a Mets fan and you dig Jacob deGrom. So, I mean, I've gotten to a point, quite honestly, this season, talking to somebody who's been following the Mets since the year after the year of the pitcher, since 1969, grew up idolizing Tom Seaver, and will always be my baseball hero. I've never seen anybody better than Jacob deGrom, period. So you can take that for what it's worth.
No, that's pretty much where I think we all stand. We are as amazed as we were previously to the way he was pitching, in his Cy Young seasons and what he was managing to do basically on his own with no run support to see him take it to another level in his age 32 season is just, it blows my mind. And the fact that he's managing to, do some damage at the plate is also kind of making it kind of even more interesting. But it's definitely been fun to watch.
He's probably like their 5th best home run hitter on this team. Like, if you want a big spot, you could easily put him up in a pinch hitting situation.
I think if you gave him the Shohei Ohtani treatment, he would acquit himself very nicely.
Yep, I'd have to agree with that. Guy played shortstop. I mean, he only became a pitcher his last 2 years at Stetson. He was a shortstop before that. So,
Yeah.
Anthony, let's talk. Ask your question.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I'm the resident Met fan on this panel on a normal basis, but I have to be the Debbie Downer on this segment. Obviously, I'm enjoying this first half of the Mets season and both plays. They've been a great story. It's been next man up, the bench mob, the Grom, and guys coming back. But it hasn't been all perfect, and I've seen this the other night. I was at a game earlier this week. But I'd like to see your take. What has been the one negative that stuck out in your mind for the Mets in this first half of the season?
Well, I mean, it hasn't been easy becoming the first place Mets, that's for sure. And I alluded before to the injuries. Well, one of the things, and I'm willing to put a pin in it and say maybe this will be outdated, because he's finally doubled it. But really troubled by Pete Alonso not being a power hitter at Citi Field until the night that we are taping this. He has hit his 2nd home run of the season at Citi Field. And maybe he's very excited by the fact that he's going to be in the home run derby and he's getting primed or something. He's been okay on the road, but you just are not getting the polar bear in Citi Field, where again he set records 2 years ago and was certainly a representative power hitter last year. And again, I think if he was getting a little more support on the power end of things, he's still the team's leading home run hitter. I don't want to sound ungrateful, but you build a team with certain expectations, and you're not getting anything so far out of Michael Conforto. You're not getting that much yet out of Jeff McNeil. You haven't until, again, the same game I was just referring to, Francisco Lindor and his grand slam. You're not getting much from him. So you have to kind of pick it up somewhere. And other than Dom Smith, who's been pretty consistent, Brandon Nimmo, who's been on fire since coming off the injured list, I think Alonso has to pick it up. And it may be unfair to kind of say to the guy who's hit 16 home runs this year, where's the power? But, come on, the guy hit 53 home runs 2 years ago. He had 16 home runs in a 60-game season last year. And it's just, this is the park where you're going to be playing 81 games or however many are left of those 81. So it's a little bit of an esoteric pick, but I think, well, let me put in a slightly more positive spin on it. If he gets it together at home, things are going to be really good.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think the Mets are really counting on McNeil and Conforto coming back from injuries kind of to be able to pick up some of that offensive slack. But when you're 29th in runs scored and you're batting 229 as a team, and that's close to the bottom of the league, and yet you're still in first place, it is a marvel that the Mets can can still be a winning team despite. And I saw this when I was at the game against Milwaukee earlier this week. You have bases loaded, nobody out, and you don't score a run. That could be very maddening for never mind the fans, but for the team itself. But like I said, I think that one of the positives has been the next man up mentality and guys stepping in and being able to come through in key spots. Obviously, like for the first 6 innings the last couple of weeks, the Mets offense has been MIA, and then 7 innings on, they've really kind of turned it to the Motorsville Yankees for like 9 outs for that particular game. So I feel like the Mets can find any kind of consistency with the offense, with the stellar pitching that they already have. Like when Lindor, he hasn't hit the ball well until recently, but he's been tremendous defensively, which has kind of been a key trade-off for the Mets, especially when the defense in the infield was such a question mark coming into the season. But I agree with you. I mean, it's cherry picking when it comes to Pete Alonso. You like to see him hit for a higher average, but I mean, 16 home runs is pretty good. I mean, for considering he hasn't had much protection in that lineup for much of the first half.
Yeah, I almost get the sense that, you know, as they say when they played a lot of road games, and now it's like, oh, you know, the schedule owes them some home games. It feels like the schedule owes them some runs. Maybe starting with the Friday night game against the Pirates, where you know, they put a 10 spot on the board in 1 inning. Maybe it's a sign of things to come. But we've seen, you know, the kind of games that you're talking about. Like, you know, again, as you said, the bases loaded, nobody out. I was at that game, and then 3 consecutive strikeouts. So you'd like to see some consistency. You love an occasional 10-run inning, occasional 13-run outburst, but you know, this team scores more than 4 runs a game, it's going to win a lot of games, and you just want that.
Let me just say, though, that 4th inning against the Yankees on Sunday in game 1 in that doubleheader is a prime example. They were as patient as any team I've ever seen at the plate, and it felt like that inning went on forever as a Yankees fan because they just took every pitch, fought every count, and really scratched together basically enough to stay in the game. And obviously, watch as Chapman blew it in the end. Jay, do you want to take the next question since I stole yours? Or
No. I remember that we have 4 questions for Greg, okay, and I get the last one. So we've done the good, we've done the bad. That leaves you with.
Well, obviously, since I mentioned it in the opener to this, let's talk about some ugliness of the Mets in 2021. And you mentioned the injuries. That's been a killer to this team.
Yeah, and that is, you know, percolated everywhere or resonated everywhere throughout the team. And I think the one place where it has a real potential to harpoon them is in the starting pitching, where, you know, again, knockwood, DeGrom has had to miss a start or 2. Same for, so I think Stroman needed some extra time, and Walker, I think, was on the IL for about 10 days. Those 3 guys I'm not worried about. But who's your 4th starter? Who's your 5th starter any given week has become such a jumble of question marks. And, you know, we've had some good luck. Tyler McGill has come up from the minor leagues and put together 3 consecutive solid starts. But, you know, and again, if you can keep doing it, fantastic. But, you know, you're missing David Peterson. You're missing Joey Lucchesi, who had just gotten it together. You've gone through, you know, the Jared Eichhoff, and you've had to throw the occasional opener out there, which I don't think was the plan. And the plan was, you know, Carlos Carrasco and Noah Syndergaard eventually. And that's still the plan. Carrasco maybe sooner than Syndergaard. Carrasco, they're talking about a rehab assignment after the All-Star break. You know, we've been hearing that sort of thing for a while. And Syndergaard has been pushed back. And, you know, everybody is going to be looking for pitching. That's just the way nature works in baseball. So you don't really want to have to depend on that. You've kind of brought everybody up at one point or another. I heard during an SNY broadcast, 14 different starting pitchers. Without looking, I don't know that I could name all of them at this point in the season. So again, saying before about the age of Bob Gibson versus the age of Jacob deGrom. I mean, we thought in that era of baseball as, you have, 4 or 5 starting pitchers and maybe a guy to fill in double headers. It's not quite the same way today. We understand that starting pitchers aren't going to throw complete games or even 7 innings at this point. But I think you still have to know that you're going to get 5 or 6 innings every single day, because then you're just leaning on the bullpen, and the more you lean on the bullpen, the less you can use the relievers you count on the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're suddenly going down to your 5th or 6th reliever in these enormous bullpens, and it's just not going to work.
Nope.
So I think again, a team that's in first place, we talk about bad and ugly as 2/3 of this assortment. It's not that ugly, it's not that bad, but it has the potential to really eat away at the good. So I hope that Carrasco coming back healthy and capable of what he's doing, and McGill continuing, then I've got no ugliness for you.
Gotcha.
The one thing that I've noticed, though, is they're about to play, I believe, their 9th doubleheader tomorrow after getting rained out versus Pittsburgh. And I feel like every single doubleheader, I always see some sort of thing that says TBA, because they don't know who they're pitching one day before. But the Mets have never been swept in a doubleheader this year, and they've played 8. They are 10-6 in doubleheaders. Obviously, maybe the 7-inning rule helps them, but the fact that they are compacting so many games in so little time because of all of the cancellations they've gotten in this season, and really they continue to basically walk into a rainstorm. That pitching depth is still ugly, but they pieced it together. It's just a very big mystery how this team has done this year. And it's been in a weird division. And Jay, that leads us to our final question.
Nice setup. So Greg, we always get your take on the Mets, and we appreciate that. But we're at the midway point, and we kind of want to get your take on the rest of the division. So far in the first half, what stood out the most for you among the rest of the teams in the division?
Well, the rampaging mediocrity is just hard to ignore. 3 contenders, and they are contenders, they're not out of it, are all below 500. You expected a lot more out of the Braves. I know they've had some pitching shortages themselves. You ask what I've noticed. Ronald Acuna is a mind-blowing player. He's tremendous.
God. Yeah.
It seems that most of the attention in the National League this year has gone to Fernando Tatis, and he certainly deserves a great deal of attention. Acuna should be right there with him.
Agreed.
And you're talking about a team that with Freddie Freeman and some other really potent bats, but they're below 500. Trey Turner, the Nationals talk him up as the best shortstop in the division. They got to tweak the Mets and tweak Lindor. They're not wrong at the moment. He's a terrific player, but the Nationals the Nationals feel like whether it was their karma or whatever personnel moves they made, they threw it all at the wall in 2019 to get what they were looking for. And I think they'll be facing the trade deadline with the idea of, well, are we still that club, or are we looking toward next year? Because they didn't even, I don't really feel sorry for the Nationals, but I feel bad that a team, they never really got to be the defending champions because it was such a weird season. And heck, Dave Martinez doesn't even get to manage an all-star team. Kind of a trivial piece of information there, but you win the World Series and you still have your job, and you don't get to go to the all-star game. The Phillies are just dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Joe Girardi has not brought anything to that organization from what I can tell. I thought maybe you get a guy with a track record like his, veteran team, that sort of thing. They've had everybody's had injuries. Maybe it's a post 2020 thing. They certainly have players who inevitably scare me. Gene Segura, I think, is an incredibly underrated player.
Yep.
But they always have bullpen issues. Right. Bryce Harper is certainly a really good player, but he's not the Bryce Harper I think we all thought he was.
No, he's not. Surprising.
So everybody there has potential. The Mets saw them, therefore I saw them. For several weeks, that's who the Mets were playing, and they all, I think the Mets had they had a losing record against the three of those teams combined. They, what's his name? I shouldn't call him what's his name. Aaron Nola now shares the consecutive strikeout record, which is a real, punch in the gut. If love Tom Seaver as I do, but that there is talent there. All three of these teams, any one of them could go off on a roll. The Nationals appear to be on that roll, and they got swept by the Dodgers. They lost an 8-0 lead to the Padres.
And a relief pitcher hitting a grand slam, by the way.
Which I think says all you need to know about the designated hitter and its utility. But, the Mets have been, to bring it back to them, they've been pretty lucky in a lot of ways. And if what we're saying before, that you're talking about a team that hasn't had all its weapons in place and is still 4 games in front, well, if the Mets are the team to take off, well, good luck rest of the National League East, I suppose. And let me just put a word in for the Marlins here, who as recently as the other day, maybe it's still the case, maybe not after tonight with a 13-3 lead for the Mets, the Marlins have the best run differential in the division. It hasn't gotten them anywhere. They're in 5th place, but they've that they're always annoying when they play the Mets. And they made the playoffs last year. I don't think they're going to be a factor this year, but I wouldn't want to ignore them. So it's a very the kind way to put it would be to say it's a very balanced division. And I think much like 2019, although it didn't work out that way, I think we expected kind of a 4-way race. And it's not exactly a race, but you still have 4 teams hanging around. One is hanging around a little further ahead, for which I'm grateful. But nobody is to be counted out yet, I guess is the best way to put it.
Fair enough.
I will say this, by the way, the Mets with their 10-run lead, and by the way, the gods answered apparently for this interview. Currently in a rain delay right now. The Mets actually might challenge for the best run division differential in the league, because it's going to go from +3 to +13 in the span of 1 game.
All it takes is one good night.
Yep.
And by the way, that Aaron Nola, the best part about the Mets season is this, that Aaron Nola strikeout game, which every Seaver and Mets fan is going to hate in history, won that game. Because of course they won that game. Because
well, it's an historical echo. Remember, Steve Carlton struck out 19 Mets in 1969, and Ron Swoboda hit 2 home runs and beat him 4-3.
Right.
So as I said that night when the Mets beat Nola, I said, well, at least Seaver won his game.
There you go.
Exactly. Greg, this has been fun. It's fun doing a nice little Mets talk with you, and luckily for you, there will be no Nets postmortem on the show tonight. We wanted one to end on a negative note. We're going to stay on a positive note.
I don't even know that the NBA playoffs are still going on.
They're done. They're done. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's just a midsummer classic show. Don't worry about it.
There you go. Don't worry about it. Greg, my friend, always a pleasure to have you on and talk baseball with you. Thank you for coming
here, fellas. Thank you.
We'll talk soon. Good to see you, man.
Okay, bye-bye.
That is the writer of a very entertaining blog, Greg Prince. Faith and Fear in Flushing is the name of that blog, faithandfearinflushing.com. You can find him on Facebook. It is damn good if you are a Mets fan, even if you're any other fan. All right. Moving on.
Even if you're just a straight baseball
fan. If you're a straight baseball fan,
he is time, and it's worth a read because the man knows how to turn a phrase.
And he knows his net stuff too. He did post a ton of good stuff during the playoffs.
And I'm vouching for him because he's a fellow Met who's at Citi Field as often as I am. So yes, it's a great read, by the way.
Doesn't win as much games apparently as you do when you go into Citi Field. 5-0 this year, ladies.
5-0, baby. 5-0.
All right. So, guys, I watched this show on New York media back in 2000. I think it was 9-10, where they talked about it was Mike and the Mad Dog. Francesa was talking about how the Giants Super Bowl win was an 8 in sports talk, but then talked about the Mets collapse earlier that year and said something like that was a 10. We like shit shows in New York. So speaking of, the New York Yankees are 44-42 going into action this weekend against the Astros. And there's enough bad and ugly for this organization in 2021, although the last week is kind of maybe turning this around, but positive is always where we will start. And Jay, provide that for us.
Yeah, Rabbi, the Yankees of 2021 are the epitome of 2 steps forward and 2 steps back.
No. 2 steps forward and 3 steps back.
Fair enough. When we did this segment on our 1/3 season mark show, I went with Aaron Judge, and he's still my first half MVP for the Yankees. But since I didn't want to repeat, I tried to find someone else who qualifies as the good of the first half, and it's why I'm going with Chad Green. He's having his best, his best season since 2017 when he was 5-0 with a 1.83 ERA, a 1.75 fielding independent pitching, and a 0.739 walks plus hits per inning. And his strikeout rate was 13.4 Ks per 9 in 40 appearances, totaling 69 innings. So far in this season, over 44 1/3 innings, over 35 appearances. He's 3-4, but with 3 saves, 11 holds, and a 2.23 ERA. His fielding independent pitching is a little high at 3.02, which is maybe a little concerning. But his walks plus hits per innings is 0.722, and his strikeouts per 9 is a very respectable 9.7. Opponents have a 160, 203, 287 slash line. But here's the thing. Since allowing 4 earned runs in 2/3 of an inning in a 7-3 loss to the Red Sox back on June 5, he has been lights out. Over his last 10 appearances, he's 3-0 with a save, 3 holds, and a 0.57 ERA. That is Jacob deGrom-like. In 15 2/3 inning, he has allowed 1 earned run, held opponents to a 115, 132, 154 slash line, and his strikeout to walk ratio is 21-1. Those 21 Ks work out to a 12.4 strikeouts per 9 rate. With Zach Britton seemingly incapable of staying off the injured list, he's only made 5 appearances, totaling 4 1/3 innings, and Aroldis Chapman imploding of late, 18.90 ERA in his last 10 games, totaling 6 2/3 innings, 3 blown saves, 1 loss. Green, along with Jonathan Loaisiga, has been the Yankees' most effective reliever. Not a lot of good to report for the Bronx Bombers in the first half of 2021. Green has been one of the few bright spots of late.
And they could have easily won a game this weekend if Aaron Boone just decided after 2 pitches to let Chad Green pitch the rest of that game 1 against the Mets. And then, he just did 3 scoreless innings like it was nothing in game 2, basically pitching half of the game. But Chad Green, possibly the closer of the Yankees going forward. I'll talk about that in a second. We have that in a second, but let's talk about the bad. And Anthony is always one to talk bad about the Yankees. So head for it again.
I hate to pile on because you guys all
you don't. You don't. Stop it.
But here's the thing, though, and a question I think we all going to ask is, who are the Yankees? Who is this team? I mean, they've just been a model of inconsistency all season. You think about this, they got to a 5-10 start halfway through April. They had an issue with COVID among their coaching staff, and then they won 7 of 11 to end the month. They went 17-7 in May, and then it's like, and then they go backwards by getting swept by the last place Detroit Tigers, and it's just been night and day. Like, you're still waiting around for this team to finally take off, and when it seems like they're about to, they take, as Jay mentioned, 3 steps back. They've been the model of inconsistency, but it just seems like something's missing from this team. Like, I don't know what it is. If it's leadership in the clubhouse, if maybe the message that Aaron Boone is trying to relay, it's not getting through, whatever the case may be, something that's not clicking with this Yankee team for them to put on a consistent run. They're 9.5 games out of first place right now, and they just cannot find a way to beat the Boston Red Sox or the Rays for the World of Them whatsoever. But I never seen a Yankee team so openly chatty about the problems that's going on. I can't recall. Look, I have I have watched the Yankees become the Yankees pretty much for the last 2 decades. They haven't had a losing season since 1992. If you want to go back then, this is the Bo Kelly, Don Mattingly still trying to work his way back from on the back injuries Yankees before they became relevant again. But I never seen like you got Brian Cashman coming out publicly and House Steinbrenner and Aaron Boone and Aaron Judge calling a players only meeting, and it just seems like what is going on with this team that something's not quite there. And I never really seen this like, with the Yankees. Like, and this is a Yankee team. Even when they missed the playoffs, they've been competitive. They've been scrappy. They've been a team that plays hard. I don't see that on a consistent basis with this team right now. They're actually beating the Houston Astros. Maybe you're thinking, okay, they take 2 or 3 from the Astros going to the All-Star break. Maybe that'll get them off. They're still they're still in the wild card hunt. They're right there. They just need something that can finally kickstart this run, a la the movie Major League, when it took a brain dead owner to finally put it all together. But you're just waiting around to see, okay, what can possibly get this team finally rolling. And then when it seems like the way they go backwards, they take a bad loss when they blow a 7-run lead to the Angels after they chase Ohtani out of the first inning, or they're not able to put the Mets away over the weekend in the first half of a doubleheader, or they just completely implode the night like they did the night before. And you're just waiting around like, okay, will a real Yankee team step up? And you know what? There's an old saying that it can get later.
Getting late kind of early.
Yeah, late kind of early. And right now the Yankees are facing the prospect of going to the trade deadline as possible sellers if they fall back any further.
You know,
I don't think that's going to happen now, though. But go ahead.
No, I mean, Anthony, it's funny. It's like I remember when we were talking about this segment in our production meeting, and when you were talking about the way you were going to approach the bad part, you were talking about the thing that's missing. I think the word you used is this team seems to be flat. There seems to be a lack of energy, lack of passion, lack of urgency. There's a lot of talk about what they need to do, yet that doesn't seem to translate to the field, both in production and in passion. It's like you look at this team and it seems like they're almost going through the motions. Like they're, like, this is our job. We're going to come out, we're going to play ball. But like, where's you don't feel like the love of the game.
Yeah.
Like that you saw the last couple, 3 years since Boone took over, where like this team, was beset by injuries and they all came together. They banded together like brothers, next man up, and everybody was jumping in. Everybody had energy. Everybody was pumped. Everybody was like, yeah, we're going to, nothing's, it's us against the world. We're going to do this. And they did it. You just didn't, you don't seem to see that same level of passion, love of the gameness, this year.
Let me say this though before that. I think this team has had a lot of pressure on them, and I think we've seen
Yankees,
the way that
there's pressure.
They're the Yankees, no, absolutely. But I think what I've seen from this team over the 2 years previous, throw 2020 out of the window. 2019, they got to Game 7 of the ALCS. Had some fun, almost came back on the Astros. Astros were a better team. Yankees were injured, but they said, F it, let's do the best we can. Boone's first season the season in 17, Girardi's last season. Again, not as much expectations, and they put balls to the wall that season. I think that, yes, they are the Yankees, but this isn't the George Steinbrenner. Missive will be read every 5 minutes on Mike and the Mad Dog when the Yankees are struggling. Although for some reason I missed that over these runs, by the way. It's surprisingly bad how I miss it. That's one of the reasons I think, and it's not an excuse, but that's one of the reasons why the Yankees have fell flat. In this season where offense is just not there, the Yankees are built on offense. And I know, Anthony, you've said it on many occasions, they're built to hit the ball over the right field wall, and they don't have a lineup that can do that.
Yeah, they're so right-handed dominant
Yeah.
that they just don't have anybody outside of Judge and occasionally Colin Stanley that hits the ball to right field and takes advantage of it. But you see the Yankees, the characteristics of a flat team, surprisingly at home, like the Yankees just look completely like zombies when they play home games. And I thought I would never see a day, Met fans are louder than Yankee fans in Yankee Stadium of all places.
Yep.
And to see the ace of the ace boo, like this I said, like,
yes.
When I saw that, I just like, and I was at Coney Island watching this game, and I'm like, something is definitely off with this team. I don't know what it is, but they have to figure it out because they're right there. They're only 3 games out of a wild card. They can still make the playoffs, but they have got to get the fire going at some point.
I hate to be that snobby Yankee.
Yeah, and guys, the fact that since the June 21st, that's kind of like the crossroads of where, pre and post, this whole thing with the sticky stuff, to see the difference in Garrett Cole's numbers, prior to the 21st and post the 21st. If the Yankees can't even rely on Garrett Cole to be Garrett Cole every 5th day, that's only going to make matters worse.
Oh, it'll sink them. It will absolutely sink them because this team is dependent on the $324 million contract that they gave Garrett Cole. By the way, fun fact, the Yankees run differential at this point right now is +1.
Yeah.
+1.
Yeah.
The definition of a mediocre team. And they're literally seconds away with the runner on second from it being even. That is the definition of a mediocre team. Quickly, I know, let's just pick up the Chapman discussion back because my ugly was Aroldis Chapman and the fact that in his last 9 starts after Sunday, his ERA was 22. 22. He didn't have a scoreless inning in Seattle in what was basically here you go, boy. Here's a nice little easy inning for you. And he needed a difficult inning because that's what Aroldis Chapman has apparently done lately. He's blown a 3-run lead. He's blown a 4-run lead. And now because Aaron Boone is basically, I would say he's probably managing for his job or coming close to managing for his job. Basically has shown the old vote of confidence in Aroldis Chapman by not saying anything about his closer role. Green's been the better pitcher. You bring Chapman in. I think Chapman's temperament has been good over these struggles, which is good because Chapman is a hot-headed guy, and you don't want to lose Chapman in any situation because he'll get it back. But the bullpen was supposed to again be a strength for this team. As Anthony said, who the hell are the New York Yankees? And I don't think there's outside of Aaron Judge, and even a Yankee detractor could say he's been inconsistent in spots this year. There's been no one player over these first 3 months who you could say you can depend on night in and night out. And Chapman, who was at a pace where if he entered the game earlier this year, based on advanced analytics, you lost runs. And that almost never happens.
Yeah.
But right now, this team is just lifeless. And I think the bullpen, maybe even the most important, be the best representation of that.
Well, you got to wonder, especially with Britton, not being available and what's happening of late with Aroldis Chapman, if the Yankees are regretting how the Adam Ottavino thing ultimately shook out. We'll get to that in our last part.
Speaking of, let's get to that last segment right now. The AL East has been exactly what we thought the NL East would be this year. Top 4 are competitive all across the board, even the New York Yankees when you want to, but there's a reason why the Yankees are in 4th place right now. Anthony, what stood out to the AL East portion of the season so far?
Has to be the Boston Red Sox. I mean, and I'll take you back at 2012 when the Red Sox finished dead last, and Bobby Valentine was probably the most hated man in Boston, Massachusetts. And a year later, they finished in 1st place and win the World Series. Fast forward to last year, obviously, Cora's gone because of the whole, scandal with the, with baseball and the situation with the Houston Astros. And the Red Sox was a mess. I mean, they finished in last place. It was a bizarre season for everyone, a 60-game sprint. They come back this year, the rotation's still a mess. Let's just be honest. Maybe they'll get some help with Chris Sale returning at some point. But the offense has finally come back. You know, Martinez is back to 2019. Xander Bogaerts is putting up career numbers. Rafael Devers is doing a great job there. And Adam Ottavino, as you just mentioned, has been tremendous in the rotation. And the bullpen has been great too. But here's a key stat. Think about this. This is a team that was projected to not win more than maybe 80 to 83 games this season. They have 28 come from behind victories this season in the first half of this year. You want to talk about a balanced team? The Red Sox coming into tonight are 27-17 at home, 27-17 on the road. They have, like I said, they've been one of the most surprising teams, and when it's a very stacked division, and think about this, Tampa Bay are not exactly doormats themselves, and Toronto with the young talent, you just wonder if they're going to piece it all when it's on finally gel to come together. Some of it being that the fact that they're playing in a minor league ballpark, I really think that young core team is going to really get the boost when they finally get to go back home and play in the Rogers Center in front of that home crowd. And that, I can't wait for that day, hopefully sooner rather than later. But the Red Sox, first half surge has just been incredible.
Yeah, the Sox, as they would say, up there, are atop the AL East. And guys, I don't think anyone outside of New England saw this coming. And some folks are wondering if they are for real. I read an interesting article in The Athletic which used a stat from Fangraphs called base runs, which projects how many runs a team should score or allow based on the outcomes of individual plate appearances. Using this stat, the Red Sox, prior to losing their last two games coming into tonight, they were at 54-32, which was the best record in the majors. But according to base runs, they were more like a 45-41 team, 9 games worse than actual, which would have given them the 15th best record in the league. But 54 wins they do have, led by, as Anthony said, solid first half from Xander Bogaerts, from Rafael Devers, from J.D. Martinez, all of whom have OPSs over 900. Here's the flip side, Anthony. You talk about that rotation. They don't have a single starter with an ERA under 3.66. But you talked about the bullpen. They have 5 relievers with ERAs under 2.90, led by Adam Ottavino and closer Matt Barnes. Can they keep it going? The Rays are gaining on them. They're only 2.5 games out. But a different Fangraph formula predicts that Boston could go 41-35 the rest of the way and win the AL East with a 95-67 record. And that's before factoring in any potential benefit they may get from trades and or the expected return of Chris Sale from Tommy John surgery. Alex Cora, who has shown just how good of a manager he is, he has this team all in on doing things his way. So as much as it pains me as a Yankee fan to say this, I'm not going to bet against the boys from Beantown, Rabbi.
I'm not going to bet against Alex Cora, who is by far for me a runaway AL Manager of the Year winner so far. I'm going to say one thing about the AL East and we'll move on. Vlad Guerrero Jr., leading all-star vote getter, got a nice little shout out from his father for being the leading all-star vote getter on. It's a shame that this guy is playing in minor league ballparks. 28 home runs, 73 RBIs, 341 batting average, 22 years old. We talk a lot about what Fernando Tatis is doing in the National League. If Vlad Guerrero Jr. was playing on a New York team, even anywhere,
or even on an LA team. Yeah.
Anywhere. But well, we have an LA team that has a lot of stars that no one notices, but we'll talk about that in a second. But the pace that this man is on this year, I don't think anybody saw this stat line coming. It's incredible what the Blue Jays are doing with their just dynasty of players on this team. You got Biggio's, you got Guerrero's, but what Vlad Guerrero Jr. is doing is insanity to the American League, and more people need to notice.
And you know what? I know they're dead last, but I do want to give an honorable mention to the Baltimore Orioles.
Why?
You know what? Look, I'm happy to see Matt Harvey back in baseball. I know he
Why?
was the Dark Knight.
I know why.
No, we only played him twice, okay? So we can't beat up on him every time. But look, you know what? For what it's worth, because of all the injuries, I'm happy to see any guy get a chance to try to redeem himself and continue his career. So I'm pulling for Matt. I'm pulling for Matt Harvey. I mean, you know, things didn't quite end well with the Mets.
You think?
But I'm happy. Yeah, but I'm rooting for him. I'm hoping he's able to turn his career around, get back on the right track, maybe be back to that all-star level at some point. But you know, the Orioles, you know what? I mean, they're dead last, but they're a team that they can be spoilers in this division because it's so good from 1 to 4. And then that 15 being so bad, and you think, you know, there's going to be easy wins in the schedule, but the Orioles have proven to be kind of a thorn in the side at the wrong time for a team chasing a pennant or a playoff spot in this division. We saw it last year where the Yankees somehow stumbled against the Orioles down the stretch. So you never know. When these down and out teams are playing out the string, you never know. You just can't take advantage of. You just can't look past a team at this point.
A real shout out though to Trey Mancini, survivor of colon cancer.
Yes,
got back into the game, and he is
too, by the way.
Yes, and a guy who is actually hitting for power this year and doing damn good in a not a shining light with the Baltimore Orioles, but we'll see how the second half goes. All right, moving on. I never know what to write for this next segment. Full disclosure. Surprises, disappointments. I don't want it to sound hokey. And guess what? I still don't. Let's talk surprises and disappointments in MLB for the past 3 months. Team or player. Locals need not apply, or we would be here until probably 2 a.m. Anthony, lead it off.
Well, if the Mets saw a first place team that can't score runs, the Milwaukee Brewers came in the Citi Field and said, hold my bill, because they were literally identical to one another. It was like watching if you ever played a Street Fighter and 2 players pick the same guy, the same character, it's like a mirror match. That was the Mets and Brewers for the 3 games earlier this week. They've been doing it with pitching. I mean, they were literally a half game out of first place on June 23rd, and man, that's 3 weeks really changed everything. And went on an 11-game winning streak. You know, after simultaneously as a Cubs somehow forgot how to win games after that no-hitter. They did it with Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns are all-stars, along with Josh Hader, who shockingly blew a save earlier this week. But Freddie Palazzo is honorable mentioning that could have been easily been an all-star as well, and maybe he is Jacob deGrom's replacement, since deGrom would not be participating in the All-Star game. But this team is almost dead last. Like, surprisingly, they've been worse than the Mets offensively. And they don't know if Christian Yelich ever is going to go back to hitting with power at any point this year. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who has just been zapped because of the injuries. The 2018 NL MVP has just been a shell of himself with all the injuries. He's back in the lineup. And they're really hoping they can get anything out of him in the second half of the season. But it's going to at the Brewers right now, they have a comfortable lead in the NL Central, which is surprising considering we thought the Cardinals would be kind of the team that would be.
I gave them the division the minute they traded for Arenado. I basically said, here's the division, take it.
They've kind of been somewhat of a disappointment as well. But the Milwaukee Brewers has been in the last 3 weeks have been playing some of the best baseball we've seen this season.
Anthony, we're going to go right back to your disappointment, but the Cubs, 11-game losing streak after they pitched a no-hitter.
That's the curse that's the curse that Jason Stark has been writing about.
It's amazing. Anthony, let's go right back to you. Give me your disappointment.
You know what? You know what I talk about a team that we thought would be competing, and that's the Minnesota Twins. We thought it would be a 2-team race between them and the Chicago White Sox in the arguably one of the weaker divisions in baseball, and that's the American League Central. They started out 5-2, and the bottom has just completely fell out with this team. There were as many as 14 games under 500 at one point. Look, Miguel Sano, Max Kepler has struggled this season, but the pitching has been an absolute nightmare. The start rotation, 23% quality start rate. The bullpen, 58% of inherent runners that they have gotten when they've gotten into the game have come around and scored. That's how bad their pitching has been. And they're 27th in ERA, 28th in opponent batting averages. And by the way, they have the same amount of quality starts as us three put together, and that's 0 this season.
I think I have a quality start this year. I think we have one, actually.
We have one. It's mine.
Look,
That's fair. That's fair.
Look, the Twins have been an absolute nightmare. This has been a nightmare season. They are sellers at this point. And you got to wonder, are they going to go back into that early 20-teens doldrums when that core group of Joe Mauer and companies finally started to show their age? And, you know, the moves was to kind of boot them out. You saw Francisco Lariano after Tommy John surgery struggle. And you're one of the Twins are starting to go back into that malaise again. They were coming off consecutive division titles. And we thought that they were going to be neck and neck with the White Sox throughout the season. And that has not worked out at all for the Minnesota Twins whatsoever.
I feel like if you ever get sick, like the Yankees, whenever they're on a losing streak, you just go to the doctor, prescribe 3 games with the Twins, and then they're all better after you leave the office.
Hey, it worked in the playoffs for how many years, right, Rabbi?
So many, including the last time the Yankees
exactly
and the ALDS. All right, Jay, you're going the player route. Let's talk surprise and disappointment.
I'm going to have some fun here because as I was researching this, I kept numbers and numbers and numbers just making me laugh. I'm going with Shohei Ohtani as my surprise.
Yeah, how can you not?
And what this guy is doing at the plate and on the mound in the same season and often in the same game has reached beyond Ruthian levels. And that is saying something, which is why he's my first half surprise. Now, he gave us glimpses, peeks into what he could do with his arm and his bat. But none of that, I think, could have prepared us for what he's done so far this season, pretty much carrying the Angels with Mike Trout hurt and others not performing to expectations. Think about this. In 2019 and 2020, when he couldn't really pitch while recovering from Tommy John surgery, he posted a 259, 328, 466 slash line with 25 homers, 86 RBI, and a 793 OPS over 648 plate appearances, which is pretty much the equivalent of a full Major League Baseball season. At basically the midway point of this season, his slash line is 279, 364, 700 with a major league leading 32 homers, 69 RBIs, a 1.064 OPS, while posting a 4-1 record with a 3.49 ERA over 13 starts and 67 innings with a strikeouts per 9 rate of 11.7. About the only thing he needs to work on from the hill is his control, as his walks per 9 rate's a little high at 4.7, but even that has improved since the start of the season when he allowed 19 walks in his first 18 2/3 innings. Over his last 48 1/3, he's only walked 16. Get this. He was voted to the All-Star game as the American League DH by the fans and voted in as a pitcher by the players, managers, and coaches. Now, look, some folks believe that Ohtani should either hit or pitch full-time, not do both. Hall of Famer John Smoltz is leading the charge, saying that if Ohtani was just a pitcher, he could be another Jacob deGrom. Jeremy Reed, the Angels hitting coach, believes that Ohtani is able to do what he's doing, wowing us on a nightly basis because he is both pitching and hitting, which is what he came to the States to do, guys. Remember that. He came here to be a full-time two-way player. Now, consider what he did at the beginning of this week in a 3-game set against the American League East leading Red Sox, number 3 scoring team in the majors. At the plate in that series, 4 of 13 with a double, a homer, 2 RBIs, 3 runs scored. On the mound, he went 7 innings, allowed 2 runs, 4 strikeouts, 0 walks on only 89 pitches, 65 strikes, got the win. That is Ruthian level work. And think about this. And I got to give props to Jason Stark for these numbers. Get a load of these guys. Ohtani has a 178 OPS plus at the midseason point. You know who has never had any season with a 178 OPS plus? sluggers like Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Joey Votto, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, Manny Machado, Buster Posey, or nearly anyone else currently playing baseball. Ohtani has held opponents to a collective batting average of 195, which means he has a lower opponent's batting average and a higher strikeout rate than the likes of Yu Darvish, Zach Wheeler, or Garrett Cole, among many, many others. And remember, and this is Jason's words here, pitching is considered Ohtani's side gig. He's on pace for 60 homers and 102 extra base hits. You guys care to guess the 3 other players who have ever had a season of that many homers and that many extra base hits? Come on.
I would assume they're all previous of homers and base hits?
No, who have had 60 homers and 102 extra base hits in a single season.
Maris has to be one of them.
Nope.
Bonds?
Yeah.
Yep, 2001.
Bonds is obvious. McGuire?
Okay.
Who?
McGuire? No.
Nope.
Sammy Sosa?
Yep, 2001. One more. You guys are missing the Captain Obvious one. Come on.
Ruth?
Yeah, 1921.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that is rarefied air, that list is. Okay,
You know,
as I noted earlier, Ohtani's OPS is 1.064. The OPS of opposing hitters he's faced this season on the mound is 627. Mr. Stark did the math, and you get this. He's out OPSing the hitters who face him by a ridiculous 437. Ready for the list of players in baseball who've had a 400-point differential or better in a season of at least 100 plate appearances on the mound and at the plate combined? Courtesy of Elias Spursborough. Here we go. Babe Ruth, 1918 when he was with the Red Sox. His OPS, 968. The opponents batting against him when he was pitching, 501, difference of 467. Ruth again, 1919, his last year with the Red Sox. OPS of 1.14. The opponents batting against him, 0.667, a difference of 447. And a guy who I never would have expected this, Walter Johnson, the big trade in 1925. Walter Johnson was actually one hell of a hitter as a pitcher. His own OPS was 1033. Opponents' OPS hitting against him, 592. That's a difference of 441. Blew my mind. Thank you, Jason, for those mind-boggling numbers. It's going to be a very interesting race for the American League MVP if Vlad Guerrero wins the Triple Crown. And Rabbi threw out the numbers. He leads the American League in batting average with that 341 mark. He is second to Ohtani in home runs with those 28, and he leads the AL in RBIs with 73. He keeps that up, and Ohtani keeps doing what he's doing as both the hitter and the pitcher. Man, that's going to be a fun AL MVP race to watch as we come down the stretch in the second half.
And then they should probably give it to someone who's on a winning team because both of those teams are floundering right now.
Yeah, you know what? Under normal circumstances, Rabbi, I'd agree with you. But when somebody puts up the type of ridiculous individual single season, there is precedent for giving it to a guy who's not on a winning team.
It's insane.
We've seen the ground win back-to-back Cy Youngs and not make the playoffs. So
there you go.
There was a precedent for it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk disappointment quickly, Jay.
I'm going to stay in the city of Angels for my biggest disappointment, and I'm going with Ohtani's teammate, Anthony Rendon. Now, Rendon was the Angels' big offseason acquisition in 2020, signing the free agent third baseman away from the Nationals to be lineup protection for Trout. Rendon is currently on the 10-day IL, his third visit to the injury list this season. He's only played in 58 games, which so far, which is probably a large part of why his first full season in the AL has been underwhelming. He has a 240, 329, 382 slash line with only 6 homers and only 34 RBI. This is a guy who in his last 4 full seasons in our nation's capital put up a 299, 384, 528 slash line, averaged 26 homers, 101 RBI, 94 runs scored, and 42 doubles. His 2019 World Series winning season was the type of season the Angels were expecting to get out of him. 319, 412, 598 slash line, 44 doubles, 34 homer, 126 RBI, 117 run score. All were career highs to that point. Overall, in his time as a National, he was top 11 in MVP voting 4 times, went to an All-Star game, won 2 Silver Slugger awards. Now, it is entirely possible if Rendon can stay healthy for the entire second half of the season, we'll see him get going and string together numbers that are more in line with what he did as the National, which would improve the Angels' chances of getting one of the AL wildcard spots. They're currently 4 games out of the second spot. But as of right now, he is a legitimate disappointment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, again, why the Angels, they haven't had Mike Trout a lot this year. It'll help when he comes back and is healthy, but this team is just floundering. And in a division when you have the Astros and the A's, who are better built organizations than you, it's not easy to do what they're doing. It's not easy to gain ground in that division. The NL West, as I go to my surprise and disappointment, is even more of a competition. We've been talking about this year. Will it be the Dodgers? Will it be the Padres? Both are going to get 100 wins. They're the top 2 or the 3 World Series contenders, betting line favorites. Someone forgot to tell that the San Francisco Giants, that they actually matter in this division. They're in first place. The San Francisco Giants used to be a model of consistency. Remember, they won 3 World Series in 5 years and were the team that loved the numbers that are even, winning in 10, 12, and 14. But the last time that they taste postseason, any win in a postseason, was unfortunately a 1-0 game against the New York Mets in a wild card game in 2016. But since then, 2017, 64-98, 2018, 73-89, 2019, 77-85, 2020, a respectable 29-31. But now they are, I believe, if they're not the best team in baseball, they're like top 2 right now. Their record is an outstanding 54-32. They are the best team in baseball at a ridiculous 628 clip. Buster Posey is having a resurgent season, although he just went on the DL and missed the All-Star game. Their pitching is some of the best pitching in the National League. 3rd best starter ERA at 3.26, along with Kevin Gausman, who has had a ridiculous under 2 ERA. If it weren't for Jacob deGrom, you'd be hearing his name in the Cy Young race. Then you have Johnny Cueto, Alex Wood, Anthony DeScalfani. Scalfani and Gausman have never pitched 200 innings for a season. They might fall back a little bit in the second half, but this team was meant to be okay this year, maybe compete for a wild card spot. But in a division with the Dodgers and the Padres, you wouldn't expect this team to have. Brandon Crawford is having a resurgent season for their offense. And this team is such a mix of young and old. They have one of the best farm systems in the major leagues. They were meant to win for 22, 23, and 24. But in this competitive division, you need to start now, and the Dodgers have certainly done that. Now, one of the reasons why the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Giants are so good is because they get the benefit of playing the Arizona Diamondbacks, who I don't even know if they know what a baseball field looks like right now. They get the benefit of playing them every single in 19 games a year.
19 times.
Baltimore is 28-59. The Diamondbacks are a ridiculous 25-64. They're only 18 losses away at this point of the season. We're not even past the All-Star break from having a guaranteed losing record in 2021. This is a team that actually was a model of consistency. This team won a World Series way in its infancy within 4 or 5 years, and now they don't know what they are. They don't know what they want to do. They don't have any promise right now.
No.
And this team is just floundering. They are the definition of sellers. You might as well just put the New York Stock Exchange on this team, because they're building for the future. And in that division, I don't know what the future actually will be for Arizona. It's ugly.
Well, I will say this about Arizona, about the Diamondbacks. They have nice uniforms. They have a variety of them. I love the City Edition uniforms, a nice shout out to the snakes, the serpents, but you know what? They have to play games outside of Chase Field, and that's what Achilles heel are. They can't win anything on the road at this point.
I will say this, no matter how rough a season he may be having, I think Paul Goldschmidt is very glad that he no longer resides in the Valley of the Sun. The Diamondbacks will be lucky because they have basically probably another week of, not of their patheticness not being the lead sports story because of the Suns. But once the NBA finals are over, that the local sportscasts are going to be hammering the Diamondbacks for just how bad. I mean,
Kyler Murray season is a very, very fast approaching the Valley.
Yeah.
They can't wait for the Cardinals training camp to start so they can again not focus on having the Diamondbacks be the only thing to talk about in Arizona sports. It's rough out there, man. It's rough.
Well, it's not rough when you're in Arizona. Trust me, it can get really, really nice. All right. Finally, let's get quick thoughts on, for the final time this year, Lord Stanley's Chalice, as the Tampa Bay Lightning get to hoist Lord Stanley's Chalice for the second time in 9 months. And I'm sure Lord Stanley was always meeting to chug beers because Tampa is just used to partying all the time. All right, final thoughts on what was a pretty dominant Stanley Cup. The only game that the Lightning lost was on Monday night, and they lost it in overtime, and their mayor wanted them to lose so they could celebrate in Tampa Bay. All missions accomplished. Jay, start with you on final thoughts, quick.
The thing that jumped out at me, guys, was the utter dominance of the Lightning. I mean, not since the 2016-17 Pittsburgh Penguins of Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, or the 1997-98 Detroit Red Wing teams led by Steve Yzerman and Dominic Hasek, have I seen as dominant a hockey team over a 2-year period as the Tampa Bay Lightning. And you can even go so far as 3 years if you count the regular season of 2019 that ended badly with a first-round bounce at the hands of the Columbus Blue Jackets, which I believe I warned everyone about when we previewed the NHL playoffs on the show that year. And as Captain Steven Stamkos said, and here's the quote, "This group, no matter what happens from here on out, you deserve to go down in history, and that's pretty effing special." He's 100% right. I mean, in consecutive seasons, guys, they had to play the bulk of their regular season without one of their stars. In the year of the bubble in 2020, it was Stamkos, who came back in time to basically skate on the last game of the Stanley Cup Finals, and he did get to lift the cup. This year, it was winger Nikita Kucherov, who came back from hip surgery for the playoffs, but was far from 100%. He played the last 6 games of the postseason with a fractured rib. Not that you know it from the ridiculous numbers he put up in the Lightning's chase for Lord Stanley's Chalice, contractual obligation met, becoming just the 3rd player in NHL history to put up 30-plus points in back-to-back playoffs. Can you guys guess who the other 2 were? Come on.
Wait, repeat that.
He became just the 3rd player in NHL history to put up 30-plus points in back-to-back playoffs.
Lemieux.
Ovechkin?
Mario Lemieux is correct. And again, the other one is the Captain Obvious pick. Come on, guys. There you go.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious.
And we talked about him at various points during our NHL coverage on the show. Andrei Vasilevsky was very deserving as the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, as MVP of the playoffs. Posted his 5th straight series-clinching shutout to close out the Stanley Cup Finals. And as explosive as the Lightning offense was this postseason, he's why they're hoisting the cup for the 2nd year in a row. 16-7 in the playoffs, never lost 2 in a row, .937 save percentage, 1.9 goals against average. It's not ironic, as you may think, the cup clincher was a defensive gem, with Tampa Bay only allowing 22 shots on goal in the 1-0 win. Yeah, they scored 4 goals or more 9 times in the postseason, going 8-1 in those games. But they also showed they could play any type of game. They went 6-1 in games where they scored 2 goals or less in this postseason. Can they do it again next season? Team's going to look very different with the players they'll likely lose to. Salary cap issues, not to mention the expansion draft. But their core is going to remain intact. And when you have 4 of the top 25 players in the league, in Kucherov, Vasilevsky, defenseman Victor Hedman, and center Braden Point, I wouldn't bet against them. But no matter what, guys, their legacy and their place in NHL history is secured.
So which one are they going to sit out next season before the playoffs? So they can stay over the cap? If you've heard that story kind of go around this
I think if John Cooper has his way, none of them will be in that position.
You gotta take care of some of that salary cap. Anthony, final thoughts.
Well, first of all, by the way, if I brought this up earlier this week, And in the 2 years that the Lightning has won the Stanley Cup, they've only faced elimination one time, and that was 2 weeks ago tonight, a Game 7 against the Islanders. That was the only time in this run that they've actually faced elimination. But what stood out to me was kind of the whole lack of national buzz that had to do with the Stanley Cup Final, and maybe it had something to do with the fact that one of the participants was a team north of the border, so obviously not a U.S. market. Canada finally had a team in the final. It's been a first time in almost 2 decades. And Montreal being the last team winning.
Did you forget 2011 there, Anthony?
Oh, 2011 Vancouver. I'm sorry, a decade. So I'm off by 1. But yes, the Canadiens being the last Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup 1993 when they beat Wayne Gretzky and the Kings in 5 games.
Yep.
That was a great story, but just the lack of buzz, the lack of promotion. And I get it was NBC's last season. But who, by the way, the video package of Doc Emmerich, just an amazing video if you have a chance to see it.
But come on, Anthony. The thing that annoyed me, and it's great to see them, do that. But how do you not pull Doc out of retirement? No disrespect to the broadcast team, but how do you not pull that man out of retirement to call what's going to be the last Game 7 of a Stanley Cup Final that NBC is going to do for the near future? Come on.
Yeah, I said the same thing about how ESPN, for some reason, don't bring back Gary Thorne, but that's another story. But I feel like it's a bigger issue with the National Hockey League, and it's the inability to really, promote the sport itself. It's almost like like Gary Bettman is caught too much between appealing too much to the traditionalists and trying to bring in new fans, where you can't please everyone. And I remember when hockey really started to become popular was around the time when the Rangers did win that Stanley Cup, and when you start to see more national TV games, like when they were on Fox and on ESPN more and more, and you start to see the Lemieux and the Gretzkys and the Eric Lindros. It's like the individual talent start to get more promotion, and I just feel like the National Hockey League, and I always feel like that the 2005 lockout, when they lost the full season, really hurt them as far as the popularity of the sport and be able to expand it. They never really quite got their footing. Like NBC, think about it, they put the first 2 games in the Stanley Cup Final, the championship round, on a network that's going to close up shop this summer. So it was kind of like an afterthought as far as NBC when you think about the coverage of NASCAR and Wimbledon, and stuff like golf coverage.
I think one thing that I think the NBC has done well is when they were in a dark place. Remember the season before they got back to NBC, they were in a straight lockout. They're the last professional sport to lose time in the lockout. And I think, yes, there's contractual obligations to make the NBCN brand a little bit better. They used USA, a network that a lot of people has to a lot of ability this year. NBC did all they could to kind of get the game back on a little bit of filling. And by the way, as much as I love Doc Emmerich, all respect to the man who did call this year's Stanley Cup Finals, our good
Kenny
friend
Albert,
and person who's been on the show, Kenny Albert.
The fact that to me, other than, and this is no disrespect to guys.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Anthony's coming from with that. And part of it is a little bit of bias because, I grew up listening to him call the Ranger games on the radio. And because he's a friend of the show, I was glad to see Kenny get that spot. But here's the thing, and I agree with Anthony. NBC, I just don't think did enough. They seem to be able to do just fine to promoting the NFL, but I think they fell short here. And I think the NHL will get a huge boost from being back on ESPN.
And TNT, that Turner's network is going to be huge too.
Yes, agreed. And I think having it on 2 networks will be huge for them. I think the fact that all of those people at ESPN who are hockey people, you talk about Steve Levy, you talk about John Buccigross and
Linda
all
Cohn.
the others, who are hockey people and who have kept hockey alive on ESPN, how stoked they are to get, this game back in their network. And I think that will help. But here's the other thing I think about why, viewership was down. It's nice to see the Canadians, to have a Canadian team in the final. But you got to remember this, north of the border, the Habs are the evil empire. Most of Canada, the hockey fans in Canada, in those markets, they hate the Habs. So, there's that. So I think that may have had a little bit to do with it. I think things would have been, maybe the ratings would have been better if the Maple Leafs had gotten that far. You don't know. But I really hope that with hockey moving back to ESPN, that the promotion of the game will improve. And you got to remember, with all the networks, ESPN can show more hockey than NBC and their available networks.
I do have to agree with what you're saying, but just remember, the two partners that are going to do this also have basketball. I'm very curious to see how they scrambled their basketball and hockey coverage because they overlap. So it's going to be very interesting.
But that's the thing. The great thing is that ESPN has multiple networks.
They do. They absolutely
have access to TBS. So, I mean, because, Turner's able to do it when baseball and basketball overlap. So I think
we'll see what happens. Yeah. Anthony.
By the way, I just throw this out there. Besides Kenny Albert, but John Forson did a great job too in his calling the games for NBC and NBCSN as well.
He should do it, and he'll be doing a good job. He's the voice of the Seattle Sounders next year. By the way, ESPN has made a damn good amount of good hires in their coverage. Sean McDonough is going to be their lead. You got a ton of women on that group. Leah Hextall, who's been a big name, is going to be play-by-play. You got AJ Mazelko, who is going to do a bunch of stuff for them. That I think both networks are set. TNT is going to have Kenny Albert and Eddie Olczyk as their team. So I think the future
and
of hockey,
the great one,
although
and Mark Messier as well.
The real best player is going to ESPN and Mark Messier. I guarantee you ESPN's coverage will be better. Final thing to talk about real quick is Tampa is the city of champions. Ooh. Did you realize that Tampa has now made every time that they can qualify for the finals of a Big Four sport? Remember, even though the Raptors played in Tampa this year, it's the Toronto Raptors. It's not the Tampa Raptors. They've made the finals. They've won 3 finals since the pandemic ended. They've now won 2 in Tampa. Remember, the Bucks won at home for their Super Bowl in front of not really a home crowd, but it was their hometown. And even more insane, until this NBA finals started between Milwaukee and Phoenix, every finals included a team from Florida. Remember, the LA was the final last year for the NBA. Right. Tampa Bay, city of champions. What?
At least
I even mentioned the stats to Anthony last night when he was talking about how many champions the San Francisco won while Tom Brady was living there. Boston became a flourishing town when Tom Brady was playing there, and now all of a sudden, Tampa owns 3 titles in the Tom Brady residency. Boston had 5.
Hey, the Rays made the World Series. The Rays made
the World for that poll. They may have won the World Series too. They won.
You know what? Hey, look, who thought the greatest combination in sports would be that Tom Brady, Giselle Bundchen, tantrum? I mean, everywhere they go, they win. I mean, they in Boston, city of champions. They moved to Tampa. City of champions. I mean, you know what? I want to welcome. I kind of want to welcome them to New York, but at the same time, it's like, nah,
that's fine.
We'll do too much in the past.
We'll be fine.
That's okay.
We'll be fine. We've had a good season. All right. Before we get off the rails, I'm just going to say these 3 words. That's our show. Let's do it again next week, boys. Right? No?
Yeah, sure. We can do this again. Why
not? For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait.
SHOW show. I think I got that right.
Shout out to that girl from New Orleans, the first African American to win the spelling bee in history.
Yes.
And one last thank you to our special guest, Greg Prince.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Greg Prince, again. Faith and Fear in Flushing, a great Yes, I said it correctly. Great blog for anybody who is a Mets fan and who is a
And there is also a book that Greg wrote of the same title. Check it out.
Yes, absolutely. All right. For JAYKAPLAN. And what's the country of origin? Oh, America. ANTHONYSTRAIT. I am Stephen Rabinowitz. We've been a little all over.
Won't even try and spell his own name. What does that say?
I don't want the bell to ring. We've been all over the place lately, but never fear. Facebook.com/onthesportslines to see our live stream whenever we are on. YouTube.com/onthesportslines to see any of the shows you may have missed. And at ONTH Sportslines for this link tomorrow and other interesting sports stats from Jason Stark and Nuggets as we see fit. Good night, everybody. Enjoy the weather.
Good night, everyone. Enjoy the weekend.
Enjoy the weekend.